Audience, and we have a quorum, so I'll call the meeting to order.
Are we ready, Patrick?
Pardon? Oh, I gotta have a picture. I have to turn this thing on, don't I?
A lot of beeping.
There we are. Am I gonna have to do the captions on my phone again?
Yes,
Okay.
and we are,
And where is the link to it?
it should be in your email.
Okay. The one that says Patrick Knight, maybe. I will ask to join. And as soon as I'm admitted, we'll start. I guess we can do the minutes and the agenda while we're waiting. Does anybody want to do anything different than what's on the agenda?
I don't think we can do that before we start, can we?
Pardon?
Are we started yet?
Oh, I'd called this to order a
Oh.
moment ago, and then I stopped because I didn't have the captions, but
Oh, you got him?
I don't need them for this part.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Captain, that's all we're waiting for.
Excuse me.
Okay, we got
Now I have it.
there we go. Maybe.
Yeah, he needs it.
He's in trouble.
I know. You gotta mute it somehow.
While he's doing that, does anybody want anything different on the agenda?
Steve, I got a suggestion for the new business.
Yes.
2025 goals and priorities.
Yeah,
Given our 3 out of 5
Yeah.
members present,
put it the next
table
meeting.
it till March.
That's fine. Everybody agree with the idea of tabling new business goals and priorities for 2025 and to the next meeting?
Yes.
Good. Okay, and that'll, again, be the first Tuesday. Okay, I suppose we should look up the date of that while
I think
we're
it's
at
the
it.
4th. I think it's the 4th.
That would be March 4th. Okay. Then with that amendment, is there any other objection to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved unanimously. Then we have the December minutes. Everybody had a chance to read them as much as they want. Anybody have any changes they would like? I see shaking heads, so without objection, the minutes from the last November meeting, December meeting are approved unanimously. Okay, next item is, on the agenda is the election of the board chair and vice chair. Vice chair should be easy because Desham's not here to defend himself.
Oh, is he?
So elected.
Are there any nominations for the chair for the next year?
Well, I have an email here from Nesham nominating Stephen Aldrich.
Well, okay,
Or he would support the nomination of Stephen
if drafted, I will serve.
For the chair.
Yeah.
chair.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll
Okay.
second that.
Is there
Great.
anybody?
Wait, you should make it, because Bob's not here. He's just, I
Okay,
think he's
I'll make a motion that we continue to have Steve as our chair.
Is there a second to your motion?
I can second that.
Is there any discussion? Are there any other nominations? There being none, I guess I've been elected. And
Congratulations.
then we
Yeah.
need a motion with regard to vice chair.
Is that Bob Nesham right now?
Is-
I thought it was Kay.
No,
I
Bob's
honestly
been
don't
vice
know.
chair all along.
Okay.
I think it's Bob.
Do you want to continue him in the role?
I'll nominate Bob for the role of vice chair.
That's right.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Any other nominations? There being none, Bob Desham is now the vice chair.
See what happens when you
Again.
don't make it to a
Right.
meeting.
We should have made him secretary.
Now, we have on the list a city council report, but we lack a city councilor. Maybe you could stand in for him to the extent it's useful?
Yes, but I don't, I have little to report. I know the building, I think is, the new City Hall liquor store is on everybody's mind. The particular liquor store component opening is imminent.
Within the month, a couple weeks ago.
I think we're still on that same timeline, like Marchish.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That will generate
Coming soon.
revenue while they're finishing the building.
Well, yeah, that's the
That's
point.
good.
But perhaps a good segue into my report, the Parks report.
Before we do that, one other thing, and that is, the city adopted a levy finally that was, they said it was likely to be less than 5%. Do we know what
Got
it
me
is?
there.
Okay.
It is less than 5%,
We'll table that till the next meeting.
yes.
Okay. All right, then we have the Parks report, which
Yes.
appears to be,
Well, I sent it out this morning in an email reminder. It didn't print copies, but I can touch on it. The city council did have a nice PowerPoint presentation last week, just at their last meeting in January. Tracy Benson, Mayor Benson, put together a kind of an annual thank you to the city staff, so she was very eloquent in naming all of our city employees. And then I think like a PowerPoint slideshow highlighting different departments' accomplishments in 2024. And so we saw across the board, all the departments very active in projects, and of course, the city hall liquor store was a big one. The streets department helped move all that merchandise, get in the liquor store into the Beaver House was a big accomplishment for them, as well as taking care of all the storage and, you know, getting out of the old city hall was really a big streets department project. The sewer and water department's been very busy with infrastructure upgrades. The wastewater treatment plant in particular is in need of a major overhaul, and the new wastewater superintendent, Scott Warner, is on board for that, and he's very, very capable, and they're working towards securing funding for upgrades to that facility. The power department's been very busy putting in three-phase power to a lot of these new developments, you know, the new apartments and all the new housing and businesses that are coming online is certainly relying on the power department. The library served, you know, thousands of visitors, users. Amanda St. John from the library had a lot of facts and figures on how many programs were attended, and ping pong table got played 159 times. Stuck for me. But then when it came to the Parks Department, we had a lengthy list of accomplishments. I feel like 2024 was really one of those high watermark years where we were designated regionally significant with the Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails Commission. You know, that was our biggest achievement, or one of the biggest. The completion of the Overlook Landing and the fabulous ribbon cutting ceremony we had in there in June was a real highlight for us. The paving of 8th Avenue, the Parkside Public Water Access receiving the state's organization for boaters award, the SOBA award, was a big one. The bear and the boat back in the library gateway was a minor accomplishment, major. And, you know, overall our Google reviews moving up from 4.5 stars to 4.6 stars was something.
they mean the Park
Yeah.
and Rec Department?
Yeah,
Oh, good.
yeah.
Congratulations.
Yes, you know, something I track as a measure of our success. And as well as, you know, financially, we outperformed our projected revenue to the tune of like 124,000. So it was really successful.
The
year.
annual profit we send over is in the range of $750,000, as I recall.
Oh, gosh, that sounds like a lot. Probably more like 500.
Oh.
After we take out our capital
Oh, okay,
lines,
okay.
because we fund our capital on a separate line item. But yeah, we did very well. And of course, our dedicated staff is really the highlight of my season every year, just the fact that we have such a strong, dedicated team that we just can't thank enough. So that was really nice to see the city council acknowledge that.
Those of us who walk our dogs in the park in the wintertime are really appreciative that the plows get out before we do.
Yes, Aaron does a fine job. It's like Crawfield Road without the,
And there are lots of people out walking with and without dogs. It seems like every day when we're down there, we meet people coming and going.
yeah, we love to see that.
And it's the sunset crowd.
Really why we promote the park as
Yeah.
public year-round.
Today, Gary Zimmerman and I met Lois, whose last name I can't call, which embarrasses me a little bit, our 90-year-old church member, and she was out walking with her landlord this morning in 4-degree
Lois,
weather.
yeah, yeah.
I was impressed.
Wow.
So I don't know if you go down there, but sunset is huge.
Yeah,
I don't know if you go down there, because when it's a clear sky, there's
yes,
always a huge amount of people down there.
yes.
Either in the new DNR parking lot or by the little walk out there and things, and there's always people out there. And it's just, it's the
And the
best
Sweethearts
sunset
Bluff
it
gets a
is.
fair amount of sliding. We had some kids over there the other day, and I was amazed at how far they go when it gets flat and how fast they go.
Can go.
That's a slick hill. So 2024, a very good year. Was
The other big thing we
highlight.
did was to clean out the trees that got knocked down primarily in Sweetheart Bluff, as I recall.
Yes and no. There's, the tree boards met, they've studied, the Sweethearts Bluff in particular has a kind of a wild, unmanaged, designation right now, so they're looking at more management perhaps for that area. We've just been more sort of reactively taking care of wind-blown trees.
Right,
But yeah, that's just something we do.
okay.
But, yeah, a really nice way to look back on last year, and it's gonna be hard to beat.
So back to the city council, or the new city hall, the bathrooms,
Yes.
they looking,
Oh, I haven't been there personally to see them. I've seen pictures. They look really nice. Like wall-to-wall tile,
right.
triple amenities, like, yeah, they should be great.
And so how is that gonna affect our,
Does anybody here or in the audience know why Gunflint View hasn't had much going on in the project in the last week or so? I presume they're waiting for parts, but I don't know that.
no?
They got it all closed in except for the garage doors, and then it seemed to stop for a week or so.
Yeah, I don't know that project.
Okay.
But are
But
you
yeah,
thinking-
so we're not doing the portable restroom trailer, if that's what you're asking.
That's my question, is that's
Yeah.
not gonna be back up.
No,
Is it in storage?
it is. And we hope to take advantage of the buyback program from the manufacturer that we purchased it from. Had a somewhat of a elusive, I don't have a price, but in April, we are gonna follow up on that,
Oh.
because you had to own it for a year, and then it's eligible for a buyback.
From them, yeah.
Mhm.
Is there a market for it otherwise?
Perhaps,
A market for a what?
For the,
the
Oh,
portable.
for
restroom
selling
portable
the trailer.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see how we do with the buyback program.
Yeah.
But otherwise, there is that idea of like a sell and swap. No, there's a group.
I bet there
I
is.
bet.
So let's see, other highlights from the Parks Report. In January, of course, it's the reservations month for July arrivals, so we've seen all sorts of action on the online booking machine in particular. The date rolls forward automatically at midnight central time, and so that is when folks are booking, because it's really based on departure dates as far as when people can get in. You can stay for up to 14 nights. So, when July 1st was available to reserve on January 1st, it wasn't that all 150 sites were available July 1st because of overlaps, because of June 25th through
Right.
July 5th. And so that's the case now, where you look at our grid of, we're very booked, and it's all based on checkout dates as far as when you can get in. And so people are staying up late, they're pinging the online machine at midnight to get in for what's now August 4th is the latest we're booking, as February dates are matching August dates. But of course, the picnic
I was gonna say, the picnic's not available
Picnic
yet.
always goes. Like I mentioned in my report, there's a gaming of the system where folks are booking earlier, like the 22nd of July through August 4th. And then 2 days later, they send an email, actually, we're not coming till the 31st. Change of plans. We're keeping track. We did this last year too. It used to be a handful of people, maybe now it's 2 hands. And so we're monitoring the situation, and if it starts to really become a problem, we need to look at like penalties or date change fees or something.
How are we doing in terms of reservations compared to last year at this time?
Haven't run that number. I'm assuming even or not down.
Okay, next month, let's talk about that,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah. The de-icers are doing great in the marina. We've had real winter, really cold a couple weeks ago, 20 below. I thought, oh geez, we're gonna be down to just a little bit of open water, but actually they've kept up quite nicely. We've actually added a few more as we're floating the new kayak dock is in the marina now, and it's got a couple de-icers around it on the end of A dock that are helping keep more water open on the end of A dock. And for any otter lovers out there, the otters love that platform. It's like their little slip and slide.
The kayak one?
Yeah.
We can get a picture of an otter one day perhaps to bring
Three of
in.
them I've seen.
Pardon?
I've seen 3 at once.
Well, I'm wondering if we can get a photograph to put in the local newspaper.
I'll try.
You ought to do that.
You otter do that.
Yeah. And last but not least, the land trust, we're with the conservation easement, we do an annual, like monitoring inspection visit. They did that in August. They sent us a letter last month. We're great, no negative conservation values, infractions, no issues there. They also, I think, formally reviewed our master plan and approved it in concept, so
That's great.
we're good with the land trust.
All right. Anything else that you want to share before any questions that you folks might have? Okay. Well, the next item on the agenda is the one that brought everybody here. I see 4 people in the audience. Do you all want to speak?
I think that's a good idea, Steve. I think, so we don't, in like a city council meeting format, they do an open forum at the beginning of a meeting where, public is allowed to speak, and it's, I don't know, they get a 5 or 10 minute time block, but then that's about it. They don't speak during discussion. So I would.
I understand that.
I would support that
Although we
same
can ask them
format tonight.
questions if we want.
Yep, yep.
And if you do speak, use one of the 2 microphones that are on the front desk there. If I understand it correctly, the principal subject here is the recommendation from the CEC to approve the project. And so I suppose we should hear from whoever's speaking on behalf of the CEC first.
And
If there are only 2 of you, then you can each have a mic.
I have a question. So the artist is on?
He just got on. and
Okay,
it might be my
there he
fault,
is.
but yeah, Mohead
Okay.
is on that.
Is there a way you can put his picture on mine too?
Only when he's speaking, we only have one input to the TV, so
Okay,
I'm only able to. when he's
Okay.
Why don't we
speaking,
put
Okay.
him up instead, since I know what we look like?
Okay.
Excellent.
Sure, I can go.
Thanks.
All right, so who is to speak first, and identify yourself and tell us what you'd like us to know?
All right, so I'm Jan Sievertson, the current chair of the Creative Economy Collaborative. And as you know, we've been here before with Moab Solomon's project, and we realized that there were still a lot of questions that we needed to answer, and Moab needed to do some more work to bring back to you with a more professional, rounded-out, clear proposal for you. And we, as a board, voted unanimously.
To confirm that the language regarding our approval, as Jan said, was unanimous, we were sent back after that last meeting to consider moving from a conceptual kind of design to more factual details regarding the integrity, the engineering, some of those things. So we approved pending changes of language around the potential candidate sites, and also with the addition of the city's plans around Boulder Park, just including those items. And our hope is to really support artists in guiding them in the process of what they are presenting and giving them the right steps to take. So after this meeting, should this be approved, then the next step is at the city level, because the city, their prerogative is to ensure any public art is a gift. And so Moab would then go to the city for that next step after.
Do you have anything else in your presentation? Do you wish the artist to speak as part of it?
Yeah, I think Moab wants to kind of outline and revisit his presentation from last time and show what things have changed and been solidified since then.
Does anyone else want to speak?
Pardon?
if anyone else should speak as well.
I thought he should speak at the beginning to tell us,
Let's get all the guests in.
well,
Like, if-
except that,
Did you guys want to say something?
It would be helpful to me to hear,
yeah, I think we should have the artist first and then have the
part of
other
it.
folks. And he's part of the presentation of the CEC, I think. Go ahead, please.
Hi.
Hi.
I think I'm on with you all. I hope you can hear me okay. Yeah, thank you for having me back, and thank you, Ruth. And I hadn't really been able to hear too well with the microphones, but I think they kind of gave some basic context of the CEC process and the reapproval of the project to come back before you with some new developments. And I had shared, apologies, kind of a long updated proposal doc. I thought I would just flip over to that and just kind of try to cover some of the main points of that before, taking any questions and everything else. So let me see if I can easily do that. Let's see. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. Sorry, 1 second. Here. Oh, okay, here we go. Okay, I hope you all can see now the proposal that I shared with you. This is an updated version, and I just was going to kind of flip through some of the basics. I don't need to spend time on this, but it's a recap for anyone who wasn't familiar with the project the first time. And if you have any questions kind of about that, we can just go back to it. I wanted to highlight, the new installation vision and the plan. And this comes out of a lot of feedback from the CEC and other community members, and also just some really concrete material developments that I know were, vital for the park board to feel like they had a more informed position to be discussing the project. The first time this came before you, it had a really different design. It was sort of standing up alone, embedded kind of at a 40-degree angle out of the earth, and it was going to be kind of in a kind of a more open field area. If you can see my arrow here, it's kind of just circling this gravel grass area that is part of Boulder Park, and I got diverse comments and feedback on that, which has led to, what I feel is just a much better plan in a lot of different ways. I'll try to kind of summarize this again in a clear way. And I think the diagram, the new project installation diagram will explain that, but I just kind of wanted to talk through the points as you're reading them. The idea here is to propose installing the project in a second spot that was selected in consultation with Dave, not approved, but just selected in consultation. He knows the space, and it's now before you as the primary proposed spot. It's in, the riprap or the large boulder pile that you can see here again in the map that's on the side of Boulder Park. There are other, possible spots we can discuss, but this is just for various reasons that I'll get into a, much more superior location. And now, instead of the driftwood tree, kind of being up in the air and being solitary, the idea is to kind of secure the tree inside the boulders, and then adding other boulders to, create a secure, position for it, and then also putting rods within the rocks and the tree, as according to the engineer and sculptor collaborators who I'm working with, and I can talk about them later. The degree, of the sculpture, was also a point of issue, and I can totally appreciate that. And hopefully now, having kind of come down a little bit to a better angle, will be appealing to you all. The idea is having it cantilever at 20 degrees, exact angle and direction are, still to be determined in consultation with the engineer and the sculptor and the actual site. And, all of these changes, I feel really step up the safety and stability of the sculpture, There's for sure a concern about non-disturbance of sight lines and foot traffic in this location. I think that's really solid. And, of course, I'm just kind of preoccupied with the visibility and legibility of this line of poetry that will be embedded in the driftwood. I can get into that process a little bit more, but, the new diagram that you'll see is really kind of allowing these bullet points to, I think, really guide the new installation plan. There, but it's also kind of not there, because I'd like to think it's a much more site-specific installation and really responsive to the environment, playing with the elements of boulders, driftwood, land, water, in a way that I think is really beautiful and really simple and really, just gets to the heart of the project that's meant to think about Great Lakes nature and culture and elements interacting together. And, as I said before, it responds to feedback that I got from you all and, from other folks, and for sure appealing. I am certain it's least logistically and financially, costly. So this is the project as it now is designed. You can see some very basic measurements that, work out to the angle I was suggesting, 20, 25 degrees here, I think. The tree that you see here is the actual tree that we have, and I can show you other images of that momentarily. So this is the actual object. We have it secured. The boulders that you see here are actual boulders from the site. This is, exactly where this would be. I've just taken them and manipulated them to show a possible stacking and securing of the object. What you don't see here would be rods that further hold the tree in place. Let's see if I'm missing anything here. So highlighted are the boulders, steel rods. The exact measurements and angles really come together once we start doing a much more site-specific and intensive plan, after approval. But, we're really ready to do that. I've got I think, is it the next one? I can move real quick. This is the tree itself, multiple angles. I know it looks different, but this is the object. It's about 30 feet long, about 3 feet average diameter, really solid, really, thick. It doesn't have any crooks. It's really ideal. And I also really, we were excited to have something that has some kind of compelling, he, gives his, insight about the process, the project, the recommendations, about how we would actually do the installation, and I'm happy to go through those in a Q&A if we want to. He lists some of the risks that we spoke with at the CEC and at the park board, and I took those to him, and we kind of just talked through those. But of course, it's important to have those here, and we can talk through those again. But I just wanted to say that I feel like this is a really qualified, trustworthy, and excellent collaborator, and I'm really lucky to have him in collaboration too with Jim Santarud, the sculptor. So he's just kind of got a lot more to bring to this project, but at this stage, the diagram and this feasibility report were important to address some of the gaps that we had last time. Okay. I'm trying to, if I have other updates here, the insurance, as I previously reported, the city manager confirms that this project would be insured by the city if it makes it through the processes, of course, because of its functioning as a quote-unquote gift to the city, which is a particular, particular category that the city works with artworks like similar to the sculptures that are already on site at Boulder Park. I'm currently working on this other aspect, which is sourcing the words from different partners in the community, and February and March are really meant to be about putting together this poetic line that comes from community-generated language in response to the bolded statement here, 3 words that describe or capture this corner of the Great Lakes for you. And I've started that, and it will continue through the spring. Timeline is the same, January through March, sourcing words, experimenting with, management activities with the project once it's installed. And June would be the installation, and kind of a public event, with, hopefully more to come in the future. And, I wanted to just, again, make a note about my own deadline. I come to this project with two grants, two arts grants, a state grant and a regional grant, that are, fully secured, and it's all the money that I need to complete this project is, coming from my end of it. But, the deadline for the project and for the grants to be used or basically returned, is no later than June 30th. And so, this has been driving my, timeline from the get-go, early last year when I approached you all. So excuse me for talking at length. I'd love to, talk some more or, field any questions or anything else. Thank you.
Does any of you folks have questions? I guess do any of you have questions that you want to ask him before you speak?
I guess I will.
Do identify yourself for the record, please.
I will. Thank you all. I'm Ann Broaddus. I live in Grand Marais. I'm a taxpayer. I was formerly on the CEC. I am no longer. I'm Citizen Ann. I am here to talk to you as a taxpayer. I am here to thank the group for reworking this proposal. It is different, it is improved, and in my mind, it's still not adequate in terms of addressing potential safety and damage to property issues for which taxpayers of Grand Marais would be liable should this 3,000-pound log become unmoored and crash into bodily harm to a person, damage expensive watercraft in that harbor. I hope you understand coming unmoored.
Can you enlighten us as to who the North Shore Management Group is by institution and/or by people?
This is the North Shore Management Plan, and I believe it is, I don't know where its authority comes from, but it deals with zoning along the North Shore. And the meeting was in Silver Bay, not Two Harbors. Correct, it was Silver Bay. There's a North Shore Management Plan that is mainly focused on wetlands and, the shoreline to prevent erosion, etc.
I can send you the link. I know the mayor of Two Harbors was one of them.
Land use on the North Shore.
Yeah. I believe its remit comes from the Great Lakes Compact. I can send you the link to it.
Very good. Do
But-
you have
but-
anything to add to that right now? Okay.
But this is not my main concern. I'm saying the health and safety, or just the safety to people and property damage potential, it has not been adequately addressed in my mind. I'm continuing to hear this described in artistic terms as beautiful, interesting, powerful. This, at this point, is an engineering project to secure a 3,000-pound piece of wood on a beach that is a dynamic environment. I heard nothing about studies of wind patterns, of beach remodeling, of ice heaves. That's what engineering reports talk about, and I haven't seen it here. So that makes me think that this is still ill-considered.
Have you seen the engineering report, Ann?
Yes, I have,
Okay.
and I have not seen data. I have seen qualitative, not quantitative. This is an engineering project. And I am not opposed to this project. I'm opposed to an ill-planned project, and I still believe it's not adequately planned. If you decide to go forward, I would request that you please consider two things. One is reducing this unreasonably large time span that was cited in the city council news, or the city's newsletter, of the sculpture would be on the beach for 5 to 10 years. That's a big time span. Could we be more specific? And I would recommend 2 years. Could we live with it for 2 years and see how it performs? Could we have data? I would love to see interim report at 1 year to say, how much city park personnel time did it take to re-secure it, to take off offensive graffiti, those kind of questions. So, as I say, reduce the time frame, please, not 5 to 10 years. The second request I would ask you to consider, do not accept this as a gift. A 3,000-pound log on the beach in perpetuity, and it becomes our problem, the city of Grand Marais. We have to maintain it, steward it. If we decide we don't want it, we have to get rid of it. When I say we, I mean taxpayers. We pay for it. This is not all right. So please, if this goes forward, it's not a gift. When the time is up, the artist comes and retrieves his log, takes it home. This is customary for many artists. It goes back to the studio or it tours somewhere else. Thank you. Any questions from you on my? Okay, thank you.
Do you want to speak now?
Yeah, I am Margaret Hedstrom.
Again, state your name for the record if you would.
Margaret Hedstrom. I live east of Grand Marais, but within the Grand Marais zoning area. My concern is about the process. I am familiar with public art and public art solicitations. And normally this is done because the recipient institution or organization or entity desires to have public art, or they designate a space for public art and put out a call to artists. It doesn't have to be any artist. It could be limited to local artists or regional artists. And they present proposals. And then there's a decision-making process. It could to the community. This is what we did recently at the Johnson Heritage Post for the installation, which is a permanent installation there. We got several proposals. We chose the one that we thought best fit with the environment and the community. So my concern is the lack of competition and the lack of public ability to select what kind of art we want in our public spaces. I think it's, and the precedent it sets as well for, I have an idea for a piece of public art that I want to put in your space, and you approved that one, why don't you take mine? So those are my concerns. They're process concerns.
As to each of you, were the concerns that you've raised here raised also before the CEC?
I am not a member and have not participated in the CEC.
So the question you've raised hasn't been addressed by them?
No. I don't understand. Do they have special standing? Were they asked by you to bring forward some public art?
They were asked to review it.
To review
and to make
it.
recommendations
And where did the
relating to
request,
it.
where did the request go originally? To the Parks Board? I mean, I'm just trying to understand where
Behind
did
you, I
this,
think Ruth can maybe answer some
where
questions.
did this project come from? I mean, it is, my understanding of it is the artist had an idea and brought it to somebody for permission to install it.
The idea is part of a much larger regional project that would be all around Lake Superior, do I remember right?
Right.
And was that in response to a organized plan for public art around Lake Superior?
No, this is a different entry point. So Ruth Pizzuaro, again, the CEC was named the Arts Advisory Council to the city in 2016. And so since then, there's been a process that we've been developing regarding how do we look at public art proposals, both as you're talking about, if we were as a community to put out a call for artists, that's one way, but we do not have any funds to do that right now. Our other is that on the city site, there is an application form that artists can fill out, which actually has happened a number of times. If you remember the Corey Steckelberg Caribou on park board land. That was another project that is similar in process to this.
I don't.
So she had, again, similarly, a state arts board project. Where the art colony comes in is that when you apply as an artist for a state arts board project, you need to have a sponsor in that community. It does not mean that we're giving approval. It means that we are helping that artist to go through the process. And so with Corey's project, as well as with Mohab's Art Colony, is the sponsoring organization. And so what that means is that then there's approval for the grant process at the state level. And Mohab has gone through that, as well as the Regional Arts Council that comes out of the metropolitan area. So that's where the funding comes from. If the city wants to retract and do inventory regarding all of its property and set out more parameters regarding what they want, that's a whole other process. So where we're at right now is responding to an artist who's a Minnesota artist who's gone through the state grant making system in the appropriate way, and then we are responding to how he can then go through the recommendation process.
Are there other, this is part of a larger project, are there other installations of this sort?
It's my understanding this is would be the first of about 20 or so, am I remembering right?
And Mohab could talk to that, but his overall vision is to circle the Great Lakes. So we're the first community that Mohab is working with in order to do this poem of sublime proportions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to jump in anytime and try to, speak to some of this, but I mean, it's also, of course, really informative for me just to hear, folks' responses and, concerns. I guess just the one about process, is perhaps not my place to speak, but, I can say that, as an artist, and I'm sure as a lot of artists out there, it's like wonderful to see a community that has something like the CEC that is interested in having artists approach with ideas, and that the park board and that your parks have art, is really just vital and wonderful. The works that are there now are, those are seriously those are meant to last, for a long time. I realize, and, this is something that the other commenter, was talking about with the 5 to 10 years, and I can touch on that briefly, but the idea of a semi-permanent piece of art seemed to be, a much more legitimate offering, I think, to just kind of come into you as a proposal. If I feel like if I was proposing a 25-year, 50-year, public artwork that you do routinely see in public space, those do tend to have that much bigger commissioning process and competition. Something that's kind of meant to be semi-permanent feels to me, from what my experience with different kinds of public artworks and installation projects, and it feels, maybe more legitimately something to entertain, just kind of being put out on the table. And so the desire for the 5 to 10 years has to do with, giving this project a chance to pop up in numerous other Great Lakes communities that I'm currently approaching and, looking for other funding for. That, if it was just like a 2-year project, it wouldn't likely kind of have that kind of life. That's not to say it's not possible and impactful on its own. You could have, every 2 years there's another piece, and it's just, that's the way it lives. But I mean, logistically, if I can just, point to the engineer's report, he does, I'm sorry, I keep scrolling this. Okay. Even within his risks, he says, while the proposed installation duration of 5 to 10 years is reasonable based on anticipated rates of wood decay, it must be understood that the proposed work is a temporary, not permanent installation. So, you know, I feel that when the engineer is speaking to these components, you know, that's his purpose. And I'd like to think we can trust that resource. That's not to say we couldn't get more data about that, but there are ways that we can build into a contract all kinds of checks, you know. It could be a yearly check-in on the stability of the piece. When I spoke, I think it was with Dave and the CEC at some point, you know, I was even talking about the idea of, you know, it could be like a 5-year minimum, and then we really, you know, reconsider the contract. I just don't want you to feel like I'm in any way railroading something into your space, and it really is important to me just to see it happen in a way that would really work, and just kind of give the larger project possibility. But I would absolutely, you know, we all, I think, would think it's necessary to have a contract that is mutually agreed upon, and there can be a lot of pieces in that address some of the concerns, you know, whether it's longevity, stability.
Mr. Solomon, when do you think that the final contract?
By April, that feels possible, you know, and these components are just really, I mean, very much open to, you know, whatever is acceptable. I really am like interested in just making it work in a way that, you know, feels right and not in any way taking advantage of anything.
Does it make
you know,
any difference to you whether it's April 1st or April 30th or somewhere in between?
I would say the month of April feels like it's an important time, because then we need to start really planning for the June installation, you know, and that will affect some of our planning and logistics. And I'm just kind of thinking about it in terms of the timeline of if the city council meets twice a month, you know, maybe I'm not going before them until March, you know, maybe then there are other revisions to make. It seems like we're sort of headed in the direction where April feels likely, if this were to go forward. But, you know, I'll take advice and follow anyone's lead.
If you combine the state grant and the regional grant, by the way, what region is it that granted the money?
Is it the Metro, what does MRAC stand for? Ruth, do you know? Is it the Metropolitan Regional? I mean, I'm based in Minneapolis, so it must be the Metropolitan Regional Arts Council of.
Okay, and what's the total amount of the grants that you received subject to the deadline?
Thank you, yes. It's a total of $15,000, which is very, very small, believe it or not, you know, to really properly. 1.5. Yep, 1.5. And it's, you know, but whatever I received, I was willing to make it work, you know, and so far, the budget's playing out. It's, you know, the hardest part is, of course, the installation, you know, paying professionals to design it, you know, the engineer, and then paying the labor, the mechanics, you know, the rental of the machines. And this would, of course, happen all by, you know, licensed professionals, and in total consultation with Dave and anyone else who's a part of, you know, seeing parks property worked with. You know, if that ends up being like a scenario where, you know, this gets approved, but you all only allow park personnel to do this kind of work. I mean, you know, whatever works, I'm absolutely on board with, and, you know, I'm not trying to kind of, you know, skirt any of those protocols.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have estimates for that work?
Yes, yeah.
And
that's coming.
What are they roughly?
So it's looking like, you know, and this also depends on the installation. Like, you know, I mean, again, I know it's not a lot of money, but it really is enough to do the work. And, you know, I've got a small team. It's not really, it's just that physical. You know, we're not fabricating anything. Like some sculptures require, you know, thousands of dollars of, you know, steel and working on the metal and paint and this isn't that. It's really meant to be using these natural elements in a way that can kind of create a spectacle and
Okay,
create.
could I
an
ask you one
interesting
follow-on
project.
question, please? Are these natural elements, or are these part of an installation of boulders for the purpose of preventing beach erosion? Do we know that? I mean, is it an engineered solution to an erosion problem? I don't believe there are very few natural borders remaining along the harbor. Is that correct?
So what this image here shows, I think you all can still see me. Everything here is exactly as it is, except for the 3 highlighted boulders.
No, but I mean, those
highlighted-
boulders, they are not, they haven't, they were brought in as part of a water and beach erosion project, isn't that correct? And do you know whether screwing around with them will change their effectiveness?
So what's happening here is that these are additions to existing riprap that's on site. The riprap isn't being pulled away; it's being added onto. So that the impact there isn't stripping away of land or protection. It's adding onto it in a way that would also secure the driftwood in place. And the
Not an
boulders.
expert in this, but more is not always better. And I'm pretty sure that if you're going to add boulders to this engineered solution, you probably know better than I
Is
do.
this the sort of
You
question
need a
that's
permit.
properly addressed to this
You need a
North Shore
permit.
Management Group?
Well, yes.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I assume that when we engage with them, that will be one of the questions that will have to be answered?
Yes.
Does that make sense to you folks as well? Make a note. if you-
Sure.
And Dave, was it I don't know, I've never heard of the North Shore land use, but I mean, the Corps of Engineers that controls a lot of the harbor, are they a part of that? That riprap that was put that far back in the harbor, or are they just on the
Probably.
outside wall?
I can't answer that. It's city land.
They're
It's
in
not
the
Army
process
Corps.
right now of looking at the East Bay, and the Army Corps of Engineers is involved in that project.
I would assume the Corps would be involved in any group that was dealing with the shoreline.
I would too.
so.
Our harbor.
I believe that's correct.
I have
And they
two-
should be addressed, yeah.
Go ahead.
And they should be discussed, this should be discussed with to make sure that they are aware of the project, and what they would think of it.
I have a question.
Fire
May
out.
I ask, Moheb, I was wondering about funding for the other sites. It seems like the idea of this would best be if they could all be up at the same time, but I can't imagine 20 sites. Like if we're looking at even just a 5-year timeline, if you have to secure funding for each location, and plan all that, I mean, this sounds like a lifetime of work to me.
Yeah, I mean, a lifetime of work indeed. So there's a plan for that, and I've got a team here who I work with, who there are a couple of people who work in public art, public installation, and public festivals who I've got working with me to think about developing a funding plan for this. But I can just kind of give you a really brief. I mean, I have 2 answers to that. One is this sculpture, isn't meant to only rely on the idea that this exists in 20 other locations. It really should have its own satisfactory impact of, surprise, wonder, curiosity. There's a graphic, there's an info sign here that will definitely gesture to the larger idea to kind of spark people's imaginations about that. But, it really is meant to kind of also exist on its own. And I think it is compelling on its own to be playing with the natural elements of rock, water, land, tree. The line of the line of the poem here that you see in yellow is really meant to be a standalone line of poetry. I mean, it doesn't need to be part of a poem to make sense. There are examples of we can think of poems maybe that have each line starts with the same exact words. Each line is a declarative statement. So I really do believe that as a project, this piece alone has its own, power, has its own wonder. But I'm not trying to shy away really from also the larger plan. And my goal to kind of escalate, what would be the word? Kind of like escalate the project in a bigger way is to first pop up on each of the 5 Great Lakes. So. And then also have one of those 5 be on the Canada side of the Great Lakes region. And that kind of work is really strategic because it shows funders, foundations that, this project really has a vision, and the team with a lot of different foundations. Excuse me. Come on.
Just got a corky.
Anyway, yeah. So we can get into that, and I could sit down and have a drink with you and talk all kinds of things. But that's really the idea here about this: is that there are ways to build it up in a way where, in 5 years, this could be 5 different pieces at the very least, and even that will create a poem that is already starting to kind of fill out the region. I think in a compelling way.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions, Mr. Solomon. One is the question was raised about whether or not the engineer's data that underlies his conclusions could be made available. Is there any problem with that?
No, not at all. And I mean, this is again a process question where I sort of was under the impression that what we needed here was an engineer's report to show the feasibility of this project going forward. And then to also finally show you that, that I've got the core, that this thing wouldn't even exist if I didn't have the tree itself. So, we just need to try to move forward in a way that's now going to be able to use the site. Like, we need to go to the site and do some of those studies, but, he costs a lot of money, and I would just love approval, to kind of move on to the next step. And, for sure, Nick would never, I mean, he's a very trustworthy professional, of all the skeptics. I mean, he's the one, that really, he would never move forward without having an absolutely solid plan. It's just the process right now, as far as I understand it, requires a report from him, attesting to the fact that this isn't a crazy idea, that an engineer could absolutely adequately, present this project as he states in his report. Even with the risks that he lists, he has a very simple plan for, how this would be physically installed in a safe way, and he does this for a living. So I would be happy to move forward and then bring more of, Nick's planning to the table and a much more concrete, schematic. It's just where we are now requires actually deciding on the site so we can go study the site without kind of having done that work for nothing. And I have other, I would like to offer also other backup ideas for sites if need be. But, right now this is what we're looking at. I kind of remember, Dave, you and I talking about whether that riprap is a legitimate site, and I would love to follow up with you later if it does require other partners, because I remember thinking that it was on city land, but that doesn't necessarily answer all our questions here. But I thought it was a feasible, an accessible space.
Is there a time by when the underlying analysis of your engineer could be provided to these folks, all 4 of them? Both the CEC and the others who are here?
Yes, yeah, for sure. I mean, I can go back to him, and I'm sure we could do that fairly quickly, maybe...
a couple of weeks, a week?
I mean, I would like to say maybe end of March, if we can agree on the site, the specific location. I don't know if he needs he didn't really raise this. I don't know if he needs any kind of, I don't know, I guess I'm just thinking about snow, is that a barrier to sort of studying that location? I'd have to just check in with him about that. But, we are all kind of moving forward with that timeline of, April and May, January and March, working kind of in the winter time, kind of working a bit more on the words and the sculpture, and then in April, May, thinking about the actual like installation logistics.
Can you
So we
hear
can
your
move-
comment for just a moment with regard to the data so that people can check it if they want to? Yes, Ms.
Yes,
Price?
I would like to emphasize that. I am a science and technical writer. That's what has been my profession. And especially among very high-profile projects, such as the failure of the 35W Bridge in Minneapolis with Mayor Ryback, I know what engineering technical reports look like. So what I'm expecting is a technical report with Nick's PE signature and number, his registration number as a professional engineer on it.
which is right here in the report at the very top there, if you need that.
I did see that, but I want you, if you're going back for more information, I'm
Yes.
wanting things, you mentioned wood decay, that's the least of my worries. I am worried about the dynamic environment of wind, waves, water, as ice, snow, and I need him to analyze different scenarios for remodeling of the beach that might loosen the anchoring points. That's my concern, and what his technical solution is in each of those scenarios. Say we have a high
Sure.
wind environment, say we have, 10 feet of snow some winter. Over 5
Sounds good.
years, all these
Yeah.
things can happen.
Sorry, I'm sorry, you were breaking up. I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay.
That sounds absolutely doable to me, and I'm sure he would be ready to work on that. And if we're able to approve the site with his initial feasibility report here, which does address some of those, the core technical, components, I would love to have us talk about that. And I just feel confident that he really knows his stuff, and he can answer that.
It occurs to me that even if we approve the site today, the question of the final design and the contract won't be addressed until April, if I understand it correctly, so that we're not committed to something that if we engineer, turns out it's not going to work, then we don't have to proceed.
Right.
I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, but it appears to me that our approval today of a location is a very contingent approval at this point, and that the real time will come when you guys have finished your design and the contract is being negotiated.
And I guess maybe this is a process question. It was my understanding that the contract stuff happens with the city, and that was kind of the next place, but that I was here before you to talk about site and sort of show a bit more, concrete detail and accountability for the object itself and the engineer's initial report. So, but I'm, again, happy to take advice on next steps from anyone.
I would think that at our March meeting, we should hear from whatever the issues that have been raised here today, how you're going to be resolving them, even if we approve with the location today.
Do we
I
need-
see you nodding your head. That's good news.
Steve?
Sounds good.
Steve?
Hold on for just a second. I have one question I wish Margaret were still here for, but she raised the question of how public art is funded and processes, but typically public art doesn't come with its own money. This is a deal where somebody's saying, we'll put it up for you, and we're not soliciting bids for a thing. We're saying, we've got money and we're willing to put something here. That process, does that make a difference to you, Ann?
Oh, yes, it does. I would like to see this put up for bid. We're an artistic community. No other artists here had a chance for this premier spot.
Well, it sounds, do you think all these artists can generate grant money like this in the time frame we're talking about?
Yeah, I do, actually. I'm a 501c3. I generate lots of grants. yes, and I would help them. Yes, I do. I know a lot of the artists here, and I know they're very capable. And I'm not saying that Moab isn't. I'm just saying I wish it had been a wider discussion. This does not strike me as public art. It strikes me as a private artist with a vision that he'd like to share with the public. It's a little
Okay,
different.
Could I-
does anybody,
Steve,
do you guys want to respond to the
would you
concerns that
poke in?
they've raised before we talk about what we're going to do? Yes,
I
by all means.
have a process question.
Sure.
This is before us, it sounds like just to approve the site. And then, is it going to come back to us with more information, or then
I was
will it go?
proposing that he come back at the
Well,
March meeting with
but-
whatever they've done.
Or does it go to the city council? And then that's where they get really in the weeds with this. Or do we?
I was
do we-
assuming that our recommendation as to location would go to the city council.
And then,
And then there would
then
be a second trip.
where he will be dealing with them and not us.
Thought he'd be dealing with us first and then with them in March, at the March meeting.
Well, that's my question.
That was what I was proposing as a way of dealing with
Oh.
the questions that have been raised here today.
I don't mean to sound like I just want to pass the buck, but it's going to end up in front of the city council. And I just, with this timeline and the pressure that he's under to get decisions made, it seems like if it's going to move forward, it needs to go to the city council, and sooner rather than later.
I have a comment on this. I don't think his deadline constraint is our problem. I'm sympathetic. It is, as a person who has
Right.
to work. But, you can go to funders and ask for grant extensions. I
I
have
know
done this
that.
myself.
I know that.
And they're very sympathetic.
But that doesn't really, that's not my concern.
Oh, good, okay.
It's more about how long do we, as the park board,
Understood.
need to go through this before it goes to the city council, because they're going to really want to.
I have one other thought about March. We're missing two of our five members,
Right.
one of whom is a city council member, and I
Right.
would think that their involvement in the March meeting would be useful. No matter what,
In our discussion.
yeah. Do you have anything to say in response to all of what we've heard so far today, Dave?
I would confirm that this is a multi-tiered agreements and decisions, and ultimately it does lie with the city council. I think that much is clear. That our role here is strictly to determine the location, the potential for the location. That the CEC has vetted this twice, that they've recommended the approval of the location and the art, and that they're working it through the process of the park board now, because it's park board land, having that discussion about, do we feel it's appropriate to site on our land? If so, we make a motion to support that. If not, we, don't support it. And so pending that approval or disapproval by the park board of the location sets us up for the next steps. If tonight we feel like it's just not a good location, and that's the conclusion, then it doesn't go to the council. If we feel it's a good location, we make a motion to approve the recommendation of the location to city council. Yes, it goes to council, the attorney gets involved, all these agencies, the North Shore Management Board is consulted, I would think the Department of Natural Resources would have the most jurisdiction, as they have this 200 feet to the water line, versus the Army Corps. I don't feel the Corps would be much involved, but the DNR would be involved, the North Shore Management Board, all those agencies would be contacted, and that'd be part of the city council discussion.
So what I'm hearing you saying is that if we were to approve the location today, or even in March, but let's just focus on today for a moment, that it's basically out of our hands at that point. It becomes discussions between CEC, the artist, and the city. Okay?
And I will say this, I reached out to both the members that aren't present tonight, Craig Schulte and Bob Nesham, just as I knew this was going to be a big topic for discussion. I said, would you like to add anything? Bob said he believes it's a good thing. Whether or not it's too much out in the public, I will defer to my more sensitive artistic colleagues. So that's Bob's statement. And again, I feel comfortable, I mean, I don't want to speak for these, members, but I did reach out and I did get some comment. Craig, on the other hand, thinks it's out of place on the beach. He doesn't think he's the only one who sees it this way. He feels if the artist has private parties that are interested in locating it on private land, that would be more appropriate, and that he is not in favor of it on public land.
Well, that adds an interesting curve to the discussion. Yes, Ms. Broadus.
If,
The rest of the others of you here, are you comfortable voting on the location question and dumping it into the city council's lap and the CEC's lap and the artist's lap at this point?
I'd be interested to know briefly if there are other locations that have been identified. I thought, Moab, I think you mentioned that
Yeah.
there might be, and I don't want to get way into this, but can you tell us what
yeah,
those are?
briefly, briefly, I can just say, it does feel really important and meaningful to have public art in a public space, and it does feel meaningful and important to, have a civic connection for a project that's tapping into, language from 10% of the population that's being used, in a poetic way. There's just a lot of reasons to go
Sure.
public, and so, in that, I've really worked hard to figure that out, and there are other places in Boulder Park that could be worked with. There's a riprap pile all the way on the other side of the beach that's across from Java Moose, where some culvert work had happened, which has a whole bunch of rocks that are stacked up, and so I've identified those places and discussed those with some CEC members, and it came up with Dave, and it just seemed like the simplest thing to do is really kind of back one location and see if that'll fly, so that we don't get into a whole kind of confusion about what about here, what about here, what about here. But so that's right now why I'm coming to you with this one location, and if that's not acceptable, of course I'll come right back with some other ideas. I'm open.
Do you have any, you were engaged with him on the location that was, what were the thoughts that you had or offered in that part of the process?
I just feel like this is where a piece of driftwood would wash up.
So my only question is more historical perspective from Dave, and so I think the only other piece of art in there is that Wayne portrait, the canoe. So was that before the CEC, or what portion, how did that go through to get?
It was before.
Okay, so there was no process before it, so it was just, how did you, but you must have dealt
City
with it.
council.
Straight to the city council. So not to.
Which
in
piece
front
are you
of-
talking about?
There's a little canoe
The
and
canoe-
a rucksack. It's like a bronze.
Where is this canoe?
It's right about here.
I see, okay.
Yeah. it's
Yeah,
a
I
turned
can-
canoe
I
and a
just
rucksack.
haven't noticed it
Yeah.
before.
It's
I'll have to go.
a little.
It's right here. I can show you if you're looking up
I
at my
showed him where
screen.
it was, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
But so,
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, Dave, so did that go through the park board at all, or is this?
As I recall, it was right from city council. Like
Okay.
Wayne, was a sculpture, metal worker. He's been instructor at North House, had ties to the community through
Yeah.
North House. Wanted to gift this piece to the community because it was like this camping on the edge of nature
Yeah.
and civilization, and he had a very specific spot he wanted it, and he went right to city council and they approved it as a gift.
Okay.
And the only stipulations we gave was, we own it, we might move it later when we have plans for Boulder Park,
Right.
which is something maybe we haven't touched on tonight, because we're gonna have plans for Boulder Park. Particularly the shoreline, we've been granted $120,000 through the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative to do planning for shoreline erosion and coastal resiliency. And so it's very, very likely that in less than 10 years, this location's going to look very different.
And if I may real quick, that's something that completely makes sense, and I'd, love to really keep tabs on that, and if it's likely that that's going to happen in, 8 years versus 3 years, maybe that's just wonderful, and I would just accept the odds because it's such a perfect spot if it's approved. Yeah.
So Dave, getting back to the process then, so now that the CEC is involved in the city council approved that the CEC be
That's a
public
little
art,
bit gray, actually, Matthew. Like, they're not officially or statutorily recognized as the art advisory group for the city council. That's sort of where we're at, where the CEC is at with we just had a strategy retreat, and they're looking at roles and responsibilities and process. And that the city council, and particularly Mayor Benson, was real proactive in sourcing public art policies from other cities. Mayor Benson put together a formatted public art policy for the city of Grand Marais that was recently adopted. It makes mention of the CEC as an advisory group, but it hasn't been,
Turned into an ordinance.
yeah. Like, the CEC is not an official board or commission for the council in the.
Dave, I don't think that's totally true. I think we have been named, but that retreat puts forth a little bit more of a sophisticated fleshing of that out.
Okay.
And because we had never fleshed out the actual process completely, and at least to the city's satisfaction.
Okay.
So it's, before we were looked to as the group by the city, and I think that's in writing somewhere in their notes, for sure. I think for sure. But our intention is to flesh it out so our process is better, obviously. We haven't had a lot of experience doing this, and as Margaret suggested, we do want to look at possible RFPs and initiating public art projects. It is not our intention to only review projects. So we want this to be a big thing for Grand Marais and possibly Cook County beyond that. So our mission is...
Mr. Solomon, one thing that does occur to me from a process standpoint, and that is the one member of our board who is a member of the city council indicated he doesn't like the project. So that argues for your submitting that engineering stuff to him as well as to these folks here, so that they have a chance to see whether it helps their argument or not, or whether or not you buried the question for them, by fact. So that's
Yeah.
a suggestion that I have.
I wondered, I wondered, excuse me.
I'm sorry, you're going to say something? Go ahead.
I guess I just wondered, I don't remember, Dave, if you reported that was the person who just kind of was feeling like it shouldn't be on public land,
Yeah,
period?
That was
Okay.
Craig Schulte, who is a city council member. Let me ask this, it's now 6:15 almost, and is there any member of the board that wishes to make a motion tonight?
Well, I can wait for,
Pardon?
I'm still trying to wrap my head around exactly our processes in this. I don't want to kick it down the road to the city council and not doing what our job is. I'm not sure exactly if we're just looking for the CEC and we're just blessing it and then pushing it onwards to the city council to really do the due diligence, or what is our role in this? I mean, what is the council?
Briefly, again, I think that we're kind of building this as we go, but one suggestion to put out there is to say, pending approval pending based on these things. You've already identified, and so you're inventorying those areas that need to be addressed. If that's where you want to go with it, you're saying that we're pending looking with the North Shore Management or DNR or the next stage of the engineer's report. These things have to happen, but we're passing it because it makes sense to go the next level.
I'm not sure I understood that, Ruth. Could you summarize that one more time?
For real?
Yeah, I thought I followed it, and then I fell off the train.
I'm just saying that the cautions and concerns that came up tonight, is it appropriate for the park board to say, yes, we're approving pending these things? And those things then go on to the city council with Moheb, and that's, at least you're identifying that there are concerns and these are what they are, and sending that to the city council.
I think our minutes will sufficiently identify the issues that have been raised here. And that they, if I understand what Dave was suggesting, is that we deal ourselves out of it unless they ask us for further opinions after we talk about the location.
Right. So that
Well-
clears it up for me. So, you know, yes, we're moving it on, but with cautious is concerned that there's a lot more to look at, and rather than bring those things back to us, they can bring them straight to the city council for them to look at.
And the council, if it chooses to ask for our input, can do so, but at this
There you
point,
go.
we're not volunteering. We're available.
I agree, and I feel like out of respect for the CEC, that that this process has been so difficult to set as far as being an art advisory board to the city, and so I think that I would want to, even though I have serious concerns about the project, I would want to move it forward, and I think it will be challenging at the city council level. But I
is
don't want to get in the way of the timeline. I think it should
So that
move.
sounds like a motion to
Kind of sounded
approve
like
the
a motion.
location,
Yes.
subject to whatever.
Let's see,
powers
what
that
should
be
the motion,
decide.
what should the motion say? Make a motion to give approval of the site with concerns of
I think the cautions and concerns that were raised, you
here.
know, and mainly engineering.
Can I
and
Safety
suggest
and-
that the motion be simple? We
I
approve
know.
the recommended location and leave our minutes to be the vehicle by which whatever concerns that have been raised today are moved forward, rather than be part of the motion.
Will they be in the minutes? Okay.
If we name them, I have North Shore Management Board approval, DNR approval, Army Corps approval, further engineering studies.
Yeah.
Safety and.
Safety, property
Safety
damage,
and
5 to 10
the-
years is a big span.
liability.
Gift in perpetuity, and it's your job to
Wait a
haul it
minute,
away.
wait, this is not
Sorry.
public participation
yeah,
right now, sorry. Can you repeat what you said?
The whole thing?
Or would you like to amend it, whatever?
No, I was just the concerns including safety and liability. Is what I ended up saying.
Yeah,
Okay, do you want to second the motion as she's made it?
I can second that motion, yes.
Is there any further discussion or input from the staff or board? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. There appears to be a majority or unanimity of the quorum. So, the location is approved. You folks can work out your future in fear and trembling. Thank you. This has been
Thank
a
you.
most interesting day.
Thank you. More to come, but
I
thank
do
you.
think somebody wants to get in touch with that North Shore Management Group
I'll send you the
ASAP
link.
for several reasons that were mentioned during the discussion.
Isn't Tracy on that?
Yes, she is. She wasn't at the meeting.
Thank you all for your civic engagement.
Absolutely, thank you.
So,
Now, it is time to adjourn, I think, unless there's objection.
no, because the last, I think, yeah, the last thing on the
has been moved to
Has
March.
been moved to March.
With that, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And Heidi,